Hello, and welcome to the IOSH podcast Trailblazer Talks, a new series recorded at the 2024 Health and Safety event in Birmingham. In this episode, technology specialist Cameron Stevens joins us to talk about tech trends in OSH. And now we have Cam Stevens, a renowned global safety technology expert based in Australia, here in the IOSH podcast booth. Thanks very much for coming into the booth today, Cam.
Thanks, Kelly.
So first of all, for our listeners and our viewers, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a safety practitioner background. Actually, my first ever job was apprentice chef here in the UK.
Oh, really?
Yeah, back in 23 or so years ago. And I studied physiotherapy after that. I started my undergrad as a physiotherapist and moved my way through insurance, did human factors, and then worked as a safety practitioner for the best part of 15 years. But the last 3-4 years, I've been working mostly in technology and brought all of that experience together running my own consultancy, mostly trying to support organizations improve the design, the experience, and the safety of work using tech.
So they were, I don't know if you saw them, but there were two cobots from the University of Nottingham on display here at the exhibition. As a safety technology expert, what's your view on these robots?
So collaborative robots is really interesting. So it's different for the listeners that may not know. So a non-collaborative robot will be a robot that does a process without any human interaction at all. So you would effectively take a human task and then you would get a robot to automate that task for you. A collaborative robot is really interesting where robots will still be doing, so humans will still be doing some part of the process. So it's about humans plus machines being better together, and they're collaborating with each other, hence the name. And it's really interesting when you work with collaborative robots for the first time, you start to see them as an actual work colleague. And I've worked with clients and in workplaces where when collaborative robots stop working for maintenance or a malfunction or other reasons, they actually start getting a little bit emotional and they're like, "Where's the robot? How come?" And that typically will have a name. So collaborative robots we normally give names to as well. Usually it's like a name like you would a pet.
Yeah, I think that one's called Spot, isn't
it? So yeah, I think Spot the dog is the proprietary name from Boston Dynamics for that particular dog. But most people would. So for example, in the Siemens factories in Germany, for example, they give their robots names from different Star Wars characters as an example.
Oh, that's cool.
It's so collaborative robots are, they have a significant potential to improve the way that we work, provided that it is humans plus machines better together rather than machines replacing human jobs. And I think that goes for all digital technologies, and artificial intelligence is the main sort of umbrella technologies where professionals that don't spend the time understanding a little bit about these technologies and understanding how their roles can be enhanced, they will get left behind. But when it comes to robotics, robots and automation in general, so non-robotic automation as well, they are mostly designed to replace tasks, not jobs. So jobs are made up of a variety of different tasks, and typically right now robots are taking away the manual tasks that are dirty, dangerous, and really humans don't like to actually do. But what we're seeing now also is we're starting to see cognitive tasks be taken over by artificial intelligence or AI enabled automation, and this is where it starts to get interesting. And if we don't start to not compete but understand our roles and how they're changing and think a bit more deeply, we will start to be less favorable by our employers as high performing or high contributors or value-adding contributors to the business. So I think we have a responsibility to start getting engaged.
And you work in health and safety in Australia. In that part of the world, is the appetite for this kind of tech there, and is it being embraced?
So I live in the most isolated city in the world geographically. So Perth is the closest city. South there isn't one. It's Antarctica. East is going to be like Adelaide or Sydney, so three or so hours on the aeroplane. North would be Singapore, 4 hours on the aeroplane, and west would be Johannesburg. So
Wow.
we're quite far away, and most of the high-risk work activities beyond construction are happening in the mining sector, and they're several hours away. So typically 12 hours drive or longer, or a 3 or 4 hour plane ride away. So we had and we have very challenging environment in Australia with the weather. So we've looked at technology solutions to try and solve those problems. So what that's meant, and because mining is high risk industry and there's a lot of money and technology going on, there is a lot more experimentation. So we are quite forward thinking in that regard. But I do a lot of work globally, and certainly Europe is significantly advanced with robotics and automation, and has been. It's got a significant automotive manufacturing sector and aerospace. Same with the US. So we are seeing a lot more advancement in certain types of technologies in Europe and the US, and other types of technology in Australia, particularly those that are bridging the gap with remote operations and autonomous systems in rail and those kind of things.
Have you got much experience in Asia, of tech in Asia?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've done a lot of work in. I've worked personally in Singapore and also worked in Thailand in the past, and I've been working with some chemical manufacturers and some packaging manufacturing as well. There's some significant differences in the sort of cultural hierarchy of how things work in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
So I think geographically and culturally, we do need to take into consideration those differences when it does come to the use of technology. And there is also a difference in the cost of labour. And sometimes we see a lot of technology advancement in that part of the world. But there are definitely some challenges that come into play culturally as well.
So do you see a future where robots are used as a standard in these kinds of roles that you were talking about, sort of manufacturing, construction, those kinds of sectors?
Well, as the technologies advance and they converge, so we're starting to see improvements in things like 3D printing, better Wi-Fi connectivity, better sensor technology, artificial intelligence, computer machine vision systems, and machine learning processes. As they start to converge and come together, it's going to make business sense, and it's going to be much cheaper as well to adopt these technologies. So I think, will it be a standard? I think it'll be very common to see robotic automation being used across many sectors, from healthcare to retail. I'm currently working with a major retailer, fast food chain, that is starting to introduce robots into things that have always been, the first job that you would do as a student.
I think we can all guess what that one is.
But I think there's also a real trade-off here about sometimes it's actually good for certainly lower skilled labour to not be automated with robotics. And I think there's going to become a social balance where there will be labour jobs that will be deliberately not automated, so that we can maintain a more healthy structure of people just having work and
everyone's
contribute.
got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there is, even if you think about things like the supermarket, we're starting to see some supermarkets retract their self-service systems
I've noticed that.
to improve just the social structure and fabric of what happens. Some people just want to be able to, when they go to the supermarket, to just have some form of social interaction. And, the supermarket checkout type person is, again, one of those sort of introductions into the workforce. So I think there will be some changes, but I think we'll find a balance at some point where robotics will definitely be seen as a standard for certain tasks, particularly really dangerous ones. But I think we'll start to see some of those more entry-level jobs start to maybe reverse some of the automation we're seeing.
And are you seeing a noticeable increase in AI and robotics, particularly in safety tech? Have you seen any developments that you can share with us?
Yeah, so everybody's jumping on the AI bandwagon mostly from a marketing perspective. So it's hard to really say like what is truly impactful at this point in time. We're at a infancy when it comes to artificial intelligence integration into health and safety. One of the main reasons why we're not seeing significant changes in health and safety outcomes with these technologies is these technologies require information. They require data, robust, good quality, complete, unbiased data to use to be able to have machines learn from and create predictions and support things from happening. So where we're seeing good quality data being used is when it's really easy to get good quality data, which is something like using a video system, so a CCTV system or a camera that's positioned on a piece of equipment. That information is quite robust and stable, and it's not biased, and it's not structured. It's video-based data is quite simple and good quality data to use. So we're starting to see a lot of organizations leverage vision systems to support health and safety decision making. But what we're not really seeing is predictive decision making like we have in maintenance. So in maintenance, we see predictive maintenance because the data in maintenance has been very good quality for a long time. So there's a good quality data set to learn from. In safety, we tend to have very biased data and maybe just checkbox data that's not very valuable for us to be learning from. So I think right now we have a data problem in relation to using these technologies, but we're certainly seeing a lot of exploration, and we are starting to see some areas and pockets of excellence, but it's certainly not wide scale at the moment. We're right at the start.
And I guess it's about using that data in the right way, isn't it? Because you can have reams and reams. This AI technology can give you reams and reams of data that you set out to use for a certain way. But then when you've got all of this data, you can actually use it in other ways like performance monitoring and things like that. So it's about using it in the right way, isn't it? And that sort of comes down to ethics. And
absolutely, yeah. I mean, all technology it's always seen as that double-edged sword problem, and there will always be people that are going to use technology as a stick, and those that will use technology as a carrot, and those that will use technology neutrally, even though that's very difficult to do. So underpinning technology usage for health and safety is a foundation of trust, particularly between workers and managers within organizations. And there needs to be a socially responsible and ethical adoption of these technologies, which a lot of organizations are struggling with at the moment. And it's certainly a place to start. So good quality data, robust, ethical usage of information, and having those more holistic ethical frameworks to use. Otherwise, people, workers will demand that, they'll effectively, not sabotage, but they'll effectively choose not to engage.
So talking about practically leveraging these technologies in health and safety, what kinds of opportunities do they present?
So I like to think about using technology to augment the hierarchy of risk controls. So we use the hierarchy of risk controls as the way to manage risks in health and safety risks in businesses. And when we look at the hierarchy of risk controls, so elimination, substitution, engineering, PPE, all of those things, if we add a technology enhancement to that, we have the opportunity to fundamentally redesign work. So we can use technologies to like digital twin technologies and immersive visualization technologies to effectively plan and eliminate hazards out of the work before it even starts. So there's opportunity there. There's then opportunity to enhance the decision-making capability of our frontline workforce by providing them with information that they need to be able to solve and support real-time risk considerations. And so I think technologies have the ability for us to do that. And the way that we can do that is to leverage the main mega trends that are shaping the future of work. So those things are using real-time technologies like sensor technologies and camera technologies to be able to understand risks in real time. The second mega trend would be leveraging immersive technologies to understand risk in 3 dimensions. So being able to not just see something in 2 dimensions from the third person, but to see risk in 3 dimensions in the first person. So we can put ourselves in the shoes of workers, put ourselves in the shoes of a construction site, and start to understand how risk interacts with the world in 3 dimensions. And then there's obviously artificial intelligence technologies, which have the ability for us to be more predictive, to support us to get out of from constrained behind our desks, to change the role of the safety professional to be more proactive. And then there's robotics and automation, which will be, taking away some of those dangerous and high-risk activities and support cognitive decision making as well. So there's significant opportunity. It's really technology is moving at such a rapid pace that what we could be leveraging it to do today might be changing within the next week or month. So it's a matter of keeping on top of these technology trends and being open to the fact that what the limitations are today might not be limitations tomorrow.
Because it changes so quickly, doesn't it? It's really fast paced. When you were talking about the 3D side of things, did you mean like VR?
So VR is a way to visualize or engage with 3D content. So before we move to the step of using a headset to be able to visualize things in 3D, we actually need to develop content that can be so things that we use a lot are 3D models. We use business information modeling, where we effectively simulate and showcase what a future scenario could look like. So you can effectively look at three-dimensional content on a 2D screen, but it's just not as immersive. So you don't feel the level of presence. So the difference between wearing a VR headset and not a VR headset will be presence and how you feel in the space, and you can engage with the space in a different way. It's interesting here on the show floor. There is not one virtual reality vendor this year.
Really?
Which is quite a significant shift from 2 to 3 years ago, certainly pre-pandemic, where we would have seen a significant number of technologies in that space. And there was a lot of hype around what was called the metaverse, or when Facebook rebranded to Meta. So we've started to see a paradigm shift happen towards artificial intelligence over the last 12 to 18 months, and we've seen a real drop-off of those technologies. And there's a variety of different reasons for that, and we probably don't need to go into the full details about a lot of the commercial reasons. I think we'll start to see a resurgence of those technologies come as we start to model more of our work environments, as we start to see more vision technologies and simulation technologies building all of the data that we need to visualize. What we were doing in the early days with VR was we didn't have the content to show in VR. So we had the headsets, but no content. Mm-hmm. So I think over the next couple of years, we'll be building the content, and then we'll start to see...
And then it'll all come together.
We'll start to see it coming together again.
Interesting. So what about the risks? And I don't mean the risks as in terms of hazards and things like that. I mean the risks as in the downside of these technologies.
Yeah. Well, what happens with technology in general, so digital technologies, is we get a lot more information that we have to deal with. So a really good example would be if I worked in a construction company, or let's say a warehouse. I'm in a warehouse and I have a forklift and I have people moving around the warehouse. How do I know how many times the forklift gets close, a near miss incident with a person walking along the manufacturing floor or the warehouse floor? The only way I'm going to know that if someone reports it. So I'm likely to only have a few reports per year, probably. So my organization understands the level of risk based on those reports. And the number of reports will be based on how much people think, what the reporting culture is and what the level of trust is, and the response when someone reports, whether it's punitive or whatnot. So we currently don't really have a great picture of what the real risk profile is in a business because we have incomplete information. Now, if I put a CCTV system in that warehouse and I have 24/7 analysis of risk interactions between forklifts and people, I might in a single day have 100 close interactions versus 3 interactions I get reported in an entire year. So that massive influx of information or data points that give me information about risk is the ability to fundamentally destroy trust and psychological safety in a business, or to promote a culture of continuous improvement and a way of improving the way that work and risk is managed. And that comes down to the response of leadership and the culture and the trust that there is in the organization. So technologies can massively influence and impact the way that leaders and workers interact with each other and the level of trust. So that's one thing. The other thing is to be able to truly change risk profiles, we actually do need some worker information. We need biometric information, we need positional information, so the GPS location of workers, for example, the amount of time they spend on tasks. That information is very personal and quite sensitive, and workers may not want to, or may be very uncomfortable providing that information. And there's a real ethical and moral responsibility from an organization to use that data, that intimate personal data, in a very meaningful and responsible way. So there are significant potential to really disrupt the dynamics in an organization. We can,
if not done
in the right way. So technology can be a real accelerator of poor culture and trust in an organization, or it can be used as an opportunity to foster and build it. So it's up to us to determine how we want to do that.
And to make sure that those foundations are there and it doesn't come out in the wash, as it were. So just thinking about, you were mentioning earlier about using all of this data, are you seeing, or has things bedded down a bit now and settled down with data protection laws and things like that? Employers nervous about using these technologies because it introduces another level of risk in that sense?
So it's quite interesting in the fact that you can't unknow what you know.
Yeah.
So, and you can't unsee what you see. So organizations may deliberately choose not to invest in technology because it will then show and quantify how much of a problem they already have. And they might already know that they've got a problem, and they're not prepared to invest, or they might not have the resources to do anything about that information. So they feel it exposes them from a litigious legal perspective. So that's one side. The other is around, some organizations use GDPR compliance and data privacy and data protection laws as a reason to not invest, or a reason to as a significant barrier to just say, well, we're not going to go down that route because it's just legally we can't. And I think it's a little bit like organizations that say, we're not going to use mobile phones on site because it's unsafe. And they just use a blanket rule rather than having a very nuanced, insightful, strategic and risk-based approach to the use of these things. So right now, I think there's immature organizations use these data legislation as an excuse, and they also use now that I know and I have to do something about it, so I'm not going to invest at all. So there is a strategic maturity that's needed for organizations to be able to play in this space.
Yeah, I think maturity is a really good word for that. So we've been talking a lot about the future today. IOSH just recently published a report on the future of work. We've got probably one of the most experienced tech experts here in the booth today. What are your predictions for the future in terms of technology? Where do you see it going in health and safety?
So my biggest prediction is that we're going to start respecting the fact that the workers are the people that should be having the technology in their hands. Right now, what we're seeing investment in technology is we're providing information for senior managers and administrators and health and safety advisors. We're not paying respect to the frontline worker needs about what they need. And I think what we're going to start to do is we're going to start to provide technology in a delightful way to frontline workers to ensure that they have the right information at the right time, at the right place, when they're actually doing their work, to support them to be able to succeed. So I think what we're going to see in the immediate and near-term future is a transformational shift to providing frontline workers with technology that is going to help them. Well, I certainly hope that that's what we're going to do as we start to see these technologies converge. Of course, we're going to start to see a significant amount of the generative AI technology support a shift in the role of the safety practitioner. I think we'll start to see safety administrative tasks to become far more automated using generative AI and other machine learning technologies. And we will start to see safety practitioners be able to focus on far more meaningful activities. So I'm really excited to see that manifest itself.
And you just gave a keynote address on the stage here about the safety of AI and vision for the future. What do you hope that the attendee, it was very well attended, I saw. What do you hope that they took away from your session?
I hope that they took away from this session that there's no point in looking at technologies if you don't have a problem to solve. And that there needs to be a lot of time understanding what are the key risks and challenges in our business that need to be improved upon, so that there's a more strategic and problem-led reason for adopting and experimenting with technologies. I also hope that they took away that you can be strategic in this approach and that there are some clear steps that you can take. So number one will be that you have the right mindset for change and to work on mindset. Number two will be that you actually have problems to solve, as I just said. Number three will be that there needs to be a basic level of digital literacy for you to be able to compete in a digital world, and that you to determine what digital literacy needs you need to start upskilling on is to look at trends rather than, there's so many technologies to learn about, but learn about the trends, not learning about the tech itself. So what are the major trends shaping future of work? Those being the immersive technologies, the connected technologies, so network connectivity and Wi-Fi and those sorts of things, robotics and automation generally speaking, and the artificial intelligence key use cases. Those are the major trends, and also paying a lot of respect to the fact that you can use a lot of social media tactics. So what we're doing what technology we use in our daily, regular lives, we can start to bring into workplaces to make workplaces a more social, engaging a place, rather than this significant difference between work and life. It's like they're far more integrated nowadays.
Yes.
So the tech we use in our consumer lives, we should be able to use them in the same way at work. And in our consumer lives, in our daily lives, technology is quite delightful. It helps us in a lot of ways, and we use tech to help us. Why don't we think the same way in workplaces? So I hope people start to just get a bit of a mindset shift and go, this isn't actually that scary, and it's not, you don't have to be a techie to be able to explore.
And we all use it every day, like you said, don't we? So why aren't we embracing it more in the workplace? And I guess it goes back to what you were saying earlier about those foundations and bringing in the kind of technology we use in our personal lives into the workplace. All will help solidify that culture and that trust. And once you've got that foundation to build on, you're on a good road, aren't you?
Absolutely. You could do the keynote yourself.
You just summarised that very well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today in the booth. It was really good to meet you.
Thank you. And thanks to our listeners.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. Join us next week for more Trailblazer Talks from the IOSH podcast.